Hi and welcome back to the AQA GCSE History Elizabeth I Revision Series. This is episode 12 and we're looking at Catholic threat. The Catholic threat got even worse throughout the 1570s and the early 1580s. As a result, Elizabeth and her government became less and less tolerant of Catholicism. In 1570, Elizabeth was excommunicated from the Catholic Church by the Pope. This meant Catholics no longer had to obey the Queen and were encouraged to overthrow her. Together with the Northern Rebellion, the excommunication changed Elizabeth's attitude towards Catholics. They were now seen as potential traitors, so Elizabeth and her government became less tolerant of the recusancy, which was refusal to go to church, by Catholics. The response to the excommunication, Parliament passed the Treason Act in 1571. Under this act, anyone who claimed that Elizabeth wasn't England's legitimate ruler could face execution. In 1568, William Allen founded a missionary college in France to train English Catholic priests. Once trained, these missionaries priests would return to England and secretly minister to English Catholics. The first missionary priests reached England in 1574. In 1580, the missionaries Robert Parson and Edmund Champion, who had both trained in Rome, entered the country. Champion was executed for treason in December of 1581. In response to the missionary priests, Parliament passed two anti-Catholic acts in 1581. These acts massively increased the fines for recusancy, introduced fines and prison sentences for people who said or attended Catholic Mass. Introduced fines and prison sentences for people who said or attended Catholic Mass, made it treason to convert to Catholicism, and introduced prison sentences and death penalty for anyone who encouraged in rebellions. Between 1571 and 1585, there were several Catholic plots to assassinate Elizabeth and replace her with Mary, Queen of Scots. The Ridolfi plot of 1571 was where Roberto Ridolfi, a rich Italian banker, planned to assassinate Elizabeth and make Mary Queen. He was supported by King Philip II of Spain, the Duke of Norfolk, and Mary, Queen of Scots herself. In reaction to this, William Cecil, Elizabeth's advisor, uncovered the plot. Ridolfi and the Spanish ambassador were arrested and expelled from the country. The Throckmorton plot of 1583 was where Francis Throckmorton, a young Catholic man, organised a plan for a French army paid for by the Pope and King Philip II of Spain to invade England and replace Elizabeth with Mary. Throckmorton was executed and Mary was moved to Tutbury Castle in Staffordshire, where she was held in isolation and banned from any visitors. The Babington plot of 1586 was where Sir Anthony Babington planned to rescue Mary, Queen of Scots, from her imprisonment and murder Elizabeth. Secret letters between the plotters and Mary were decoded, which gave Elizabeth advisers the evidence needed to prove Mary's guilt. This finally led to the execution of Mary, Queen of Scots, Babington, and 6 other plotters. It's important to note that this is known as regicide because Elizabeth killed Mary, which is a monarch killing another monarch. The most important bit of this is that Mary, Queen of Scots, was a figurehead for Catholic rebellion, and you could argue that these rebellions wouldn't have existed if they didn't have a figurehead like Mary to replace Elizabeth. And then finally, the main reason why these plots didn't succeed was because Francis Walsingham and his massive spy network were highly effective and established, and they uncovered many plots before they were even carried out. Due to the increase in Catholic threat, the persecution of Catholics increased. Anti-Catholic laws were enforced more strictly than they had been earlier in Elizabeth's reign, and in 1585 Parliament passed 2 new laws. Mary, Queen of Scots, wouldn't be allowed to become Queen if Elizabeth was assassinated. Elizabeth and her advisers hoped that this would stop the plots. Missionaries had 40 days to leave the country. After that, any priest still in the country would be executed. In 1586, Francis Walsingham used his spy network to gather evidence for Mary, Queen of Scots' involvement in the Babington plot. He intercepted and decoded Mary's letters, including one which was approved plans to assassinate the Queen and free Mary from prison. Walsingham persuaded Elizabeth to put Mary on trial in October of 1586. Mary was found guilty. The Parliament and the Privy Council believed it was necessary for the future of the country and Elizabeth's safety for Mary to be executed, but Elizabeth was very reluctant to do this. Elizabeth was reluctant to execute Mary because she was Queen of Scotland. Elizabeth believed that monarchs ruled by divine right, so she felt that she had no right to execute a legitimate monarch. She also feared that executing Mary would undermine her own claim to rule by divine right and might fuel more plots against her. After much hesitation, Mary was executed on the 8th of February of 1587. Thus, the execution removed the Catholic threat to Elizabeth at home. The English Catholics now had no figurehead, they lost the hope, and as a result there were no more major Catholic plots in Elizabeth's reign. So that's the end of episode 12 of the AQA GCSE History Elizabeth I revision series. Next episode we'll be looking at the Puritan threat. Thank you for watching and I hope you enjoyed.